is going on?
Somebody call security.
Who is that girl?
The flowers inside Holy Grace Cathedral in Abuja had been arranged since dawn. White lilies, gold candles, silk ribbons on every bench. Over 200 guests filled the hall, dressed in their best lace and native wear. Everyone had come to witness one thing, the wedding of Tibena Obi, the most talked about man in all of Abuja. Tibena stood at the altar in a crisp white kaftan. He was tall, calm, and quietly handsome. At 41 he had built everything from nothing. His company, Obi Holdings, employed over 400 people. His charity, the Open Hand Foundation, fed poor families in Kano, Enugu, and Port Harcourt every single week. He was a good man. Everyone said so. Today he was finally getting married. The organ played. The doors opened. And Ada Nwosu walked in. She was beautiful. Her gown was heavy with lace and crystal beads. The guests stood. Some women pressed their hands to their chests. Tibena smiled, the kind of smile a man saves for the moment he has waited years for. Then a small figure burst through the side door. Before we begin, make sure you subscribe to Tales from Africa so you never miss a powerful story of love, betrayal, and triumph. Now let's dive into it. A girl. Tiny. Maybe 12 years old. Her dress was torn at the hem. Her feet were in broken slippers. Her hair had not been combed in days. She ran straight down the aisle before any usher could grab her, and seized Tibena's hand with both of hers. The music stopped. Every single person in that cathedral froze. Tibena looked down at the girl. She was breathing hard. Her eyes were red. And she was staring up at him like someone who had been running toward this moment for a very long time. "Please," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please, sir. Don't do this." The silence that followed was the loudest thing Tibena had ever heard. He looked at Ada. She had stopped walking. Her smile was gone. Something cold passed across her face, just for a second, before she forced the smile back. Tibena looked at his guest. He looked at his best man. He looked at the pastor. Then he looked back at the girl. Her grip on his hand did not loosen. If anything, it tightened. An usher stepped forward. "Let him go, this girl. Leave her." Tibena's voice was quiet but sharp. The usher stepped back. Tibena knelt down slowly. He brought himself to her level. Up close he could see how thin her face was. He could see the dust on her arms, the hunger in her cheeks. This was not a child playing a prank. This was a child who was afraid. "What is your name?" he asked softly. She swallowed hard. "Nkechi," she said. "Nkechi." He kept his voice gentle. "Why are you here?" She reached into her dress pocket and pulled out a small phone, cracked, battered, barely alive. Her hands were shaking. "Because I heard something, sir," she whispered. "Something bad. And if you marry her today," her voice broke, "you will lose everything." The cathedral was completely still. Tibena did not stand up. He did not wave her away. He just stayed there, eye to eye with this strange, trembling girl, while 200 guests watched and wondered what in the world was about to happen next. Tibena slowly rose to his feet. He did not let go of Nkechi's hand. He turned to face the pastor, then the guests, then finally Ada. His voice was steady. "I need 5 minutes," he said. "Please wait." A loud murmur swept through the cathedral like wind through dry grass. Ada stepped forward, her eyes sharp. "Tibena, what is this? Who is this child?" "5 minutes, Ada." His tone did not change. He walked Nkechi gently to the small side room behind the altar, the same room where he had straightened his kaftan just 30 minutes ago. He closed the door. The noise from the cathedral became a low hum. He crouched down again and looked at her. "Talk to me." Nkechi's fingers trembled as she unlocked the cracked phone. The screen was so damaged that a long dark line split it from top to bottom. She pressed play. A voice came out of the speaker, smooth, low, and careful. "Once the wedding is done, we move quickly. The power of attorney gives you full access to Obi Holdings within 60 days. After that, we transfer the assets, drain the foundation accounts, and he won't even know what hit him." Then a woman's voice answered. Tibena recognized it immediately. It was Ada. "And the charity funds too?" "Everything. The man trusts you completely. That's all we need." The recording ended. Tibena did not move for a long time. He stayed crouched on the floor of that small room, staring at the phone in Nkechi's hand. The sounds from outside, the guests, the music, the rustling, all of it faded. There was only the echo of Ada's voice playing over and over in his mind. "The man trusts you completely. That's all we need." He had trusted her. For 2 years he had trusted her completely. He stood up slowly. His jaw was tight. His eyes were still. "Where did you get this?" he asked. Nkechi looked down at her broken slippers. "I sleep here," she said quietly. "In the back of the church. Behind the last storage room. Nobody knows. I have been here for almost 2 years." Tebena stared at her. "You live here? In this church?" She nodded. "Since my mama died. I had nowhere to go." He looked at this small girl, homeless, hungry, living in shadows, who had still chosen to step forward and protect a man she had never met. Something moved deep inside his chest. "3 nights ago," Nkechi continued, "2 people came into the church very late. A woman and a man in a suit. They thought they were alone. I was hiding behind the generator room. I heard everything." "Did they see you?" "No, sir." Tebena exhaled slowly. He ran his hand over his face. Outside, he could hear Ada's heels clicking on the cathedral floor. He could hear guests shifting and whispering. He could hear his best man calling his name. He straightened his kaftan. He looked at Nkechi one more time, her tired eyes, her brave face, her small shoulders carrying something enormous. "Stay here," he said gently. "Don't move. I will come back for you." He opened the door and walked back into the cathedral. Ada smiled when she saw him. It was a warm smile. A convincing smile. The kind of smile that had fooled him for 2 whole years. But not anymore. Tebena walked back to the altar slowly. His footsteps were calm. His face was unreadable. But inside, his chest felt like a burning building trying to hold itself together. He stood before the pastor. He looked out at 200 faces, friends, family, business partners, strangers. All of them watching him. All of them waiting. Ada moved to stand beside him. She reached for his hand. He did not take it. Her smile flickered. Tebena turned to face the congregation. He clasped his hands together in front of him and drew one long breath. "I want to thank everyone for coming today," he began. His voice was quiet, but it carried across every corner of that cathedral. "You traveled from Lagos, from Enugu, from Port Harcourt. Some of you came from outside Nigeria. I am grateful." The guests smiled and nodded. They thought he was giving a pre-wedding speech. "But I cannot marry this woman today." The cathedral exploded. Gasp. Voices. A glass fell somewhere near the back and shattered on the floor. Ada grabbed his arm. "Tebena?" Her voice was a sharp whisper. "What are you doing?" He looked at her hand on his arm, then looked at her face. "I know, Ada." Her expression changed. "Just for a moment. Just long enough. I have evidence," Tebena continued, turning back to the guests, "that this wedding was never about love. It was about access. Access to my company, my foundation, and everything I have spent my life building for others." Ada released his arm. She stepped back. Her lawyer, a thin man in a gray suit sitting in the 3rd row, stood up slowly, his face tight. "This is outrageous," Ada said loudly. She turned to the guests with wide eyes and open hands. "He is lying. Someone has poisoned his mind." "A recording exists," Tebena said simply. "Your voice. Your lawyer's voice. Recorded 3 nights ago inside this very building." The thin man in the gray suit froze. Ada's face went completely still. The performance was over. Within the hour, 2 police officers arrived at Holy Grace Cathedral. Tebena had made one phone call from the side room, not to cancel the cake order, not to call his mother. He had called Inspector Dauda of the Abuja Criminal Division, a man he had once helped with funding for a police youth program. Inspector Dauda did not waste time. Ada Nwosu, her lawyer Bartholomew Ease, and a 3rd accomplice linked to the asset transfer plan were escorted out of the cathedral in front of every guest. Ada said nothing as they walked her out. She kept her chin up and her eyes forward, as though she were still performing for an audience. The guests sat in stunned silence long after the doors closed. Tebena stood alone at the altar. The white lilies were still fresh. The gold candles still burned. Everything looked exactly the same as it had an hour ago, but nothing was the same. He thought about 2 years of dinners and conversations and plans. He thought about the ring still sitting in his best man's pocket. He thought about how close he had come. Then he thought about a small girl waiting alone in a back room. He turned and walked toward the side door. Nkechi was sitting on the floor when Tebena opened the door. Her knees were pulled to her chest. Her back was against the wall. She had not moved. She looked up at him with eyes that were trying very hard to read his face, trying to know if she had done the right thing or made everything worse. Tebena sat down on the small wooden bench beside her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "It is done," he said quietly. "The wedding is cancelled. They have been arrested." Nkechi stared at him. "All of them? All of them?" She let out a breath so long it seemed like she had been holding it for 3 days. Her thin shoulders dropped. Her eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away quickly, the way children do when they have learned that crying does not change anything. Tebena watched her carefully. This child had walked into a cathedral full of powerful people with nothing but a cracked phone and shaking hands. She had stood in front of a man she had never met and risked everything, not for money, not for reward, but simply because it was the right thing to do. "How long have you truly been living here?" he asked. Nkechi picked at the hem of her torn dress. 22 months, she said. "Since my mama passed. She had a sickness. We had no money for the hospital." She paused. "We were living in Lugby. After she died, our landlord took everything. I had no family to go to." "No aunties? No uncles?" She shook her head. Mama was the only one. Tebena was quiet for a moment. Outside, he could hear the cathedral slowly emptying. Guests talking. Cars starting. The wedding that never happened dissolving into the Abuja afternoon. "Where do you sleep exactly?" he asked. "Behind the last storage room. There is a space between the wall and the generator. It is dry when it rains." She said it simply, without shame, the way someone describes a place they have simply learned to call home. Tebena looked at her small hands. Her nails were clean despite everything. She had made an effort. He noticed that. He noticed the care she had taken with herself even in impossible conditions. "Were you afraid?" he asked. "When you ran out there today?" Nkechi was quiet for a while. Then she said, "Yes. My legs were shaking the whole time. I nearly turned back 3 times." "What stopped you from turning back?" She looked up at him with steady eyes. "My mama always said that staying silent when you know the truth makes you part of the lie." Tebena felt those words settle into him like stones dropping into still water. He stood up and extended his hand to her. "Come," he said. "You cannot stay here tonight." Nkechi looked at his hand. She hesitated. She had learned, in 22 months on her own, to be careful about trusting people. "Where are you taking me?" she asked. "Somewhere safe," he said. "Somewhere with food and a real bed and locked doors." He kept his hand extended and his voice gentle. "I promise you, Nkechi. No harm will come to you." She studied his face for a long time. Then slowly, carefully, she placed her small hand in his. Tebena's house was in Maitama, behind tall white walls and a black iron gate. When the car pulled in, Nkechi pressed her face slightly toward the window. She did not say anything. She just looked. The compound had a garden with trimmed green hedges and a small fountain that caught the evening light. To most people it was simply a fine house. To a girl who had slept behind a generator for 22 months, it looked like something from a dream. Tebena's housekeeper, Mama Bizi, met them at the door. She was a round, warm woman from Ibadan with kind eyes and a wrapper tied firmly at her waist. When she saw Nkechi, she did not ask unnecessary questions. She simply looked at Tebena and he gave a small nod. Mama Bizi knelt down to Nkechi's level. "Are you hungry, my dear?" Nkechi nodded once. Quietly. "Good. Come with me." Within the hour, Nkechi had eaten jollof rice, fried plantain, and a full bowl of pepper soup. She ate carefully at first, watching the table, watching the cutlery, unsure of the rules of this new place. But hunger is stronger than shyness, and by the second plate, she ate like a child who had not had a proper meal in days, because she hadn't. Tebena sat across the table and watched her. He did not stare. He simply stayed present, drinking his tea, making the space feel normal and safe. After dinner, Mama Bizi showed Nkechi to a small guest room with a yellow curtain and a firm mattress. Nkechi stood in the doorway for a moment before walking in. She ran her hand across the bedsheet slowly, almost like she was checking it was real. That night, for the first time in nearly 2 years, she slept in a bed. The following weeks moved quietly. Tebena enrolled Nkechi in a nearby private school in Maitama. He bought her uniforms, books, and a school bag. He did not make a ceremony of it. He simply made sure she had what she needed. Nkechi was sharp. Her teachers noticed within the first week. She asked questions in class. She finished assignments before others. She had a mind that had been sharpened by survival, and now that it had proper food and rest and safety behind it, it opened like something that had been waiting a long time for the right conditions. But there were hard nights too. Some evenings, Tebena would pass her room and hear nothing, a silence that felt too careful. He would knock softly and find her sitting on the bed, staring at nothing. On those nights he would sit in the chair by the window and just be there. He never forced conversation. He just stayed. Slowly she began to talk. About her mother. About Lugby. About the things she missed and the things she was still afraid of. And Tebena listened. Every word. One evening, 3 months after she arrived, Nkechi looked at him from across the sitting room and said, "Why are you doing all this for me?" Tebena set down his newspaper. He thought about it honestly before answering. "Because you did something very brave for a man you did not know," he said. "And because no child should be invisible." Nkechi looked at him for a long time. Then she turned back to her homework and said nothing more, but something in her face had shifted, softened, like a door opening just 1 inch wider than before. The adoption papers were signed on a Tuesday morning in Abuja. It was not a loud day. There was no crowd, no cathedral full of guests, no gold ribbons or white lilies. Just Tebena, Nkechi, a family court judge, and Mama Bizi who cried quietly into her wrapper the entire time. The judge slid the final document across the table. Tebena signed it. Then he passed the pen to Nkechi. She held it carefully. She looked at the line where her name was supposed to go. Her hand was steady, not shaking like it had been that morning in the cathedral 6 months ago. She pressed the pen to the paper and signed her name cleanly. Nkechi Obi. She stared at it for a moment. Then she looked up at Tebena. He was already looking at her. "Is it real?" she asked. "It is real," he said. She nodded slowly. Then she folded her hands on the table and looked straight ahead, the way people do when they are trying very hard not to cry in public. Mama Bizi did not try at all. Ada Nwosu was sentenced to 4 years in Kirikiri prison in Lagos. Her lawyer Bartholomew Ease received 3 years. The third accomplice took a plea deal and testified against them both. Tebena did not attend the sentencing. He had said everything he needed to say in that cathedral. He did not need to watch it end. Obi Holdings continued to grow. The Open Hand Foundation expanded its feeding program to 3 new states, Benue, Sokoto, and Delta. Tebena hired a full operations team and gave them more resources than they had ever had before. He told an interviewer once that a child had reminded him what the foundation was truly for, and that he intended to honor that reminder every day. Nkechi thrived. She moved from the top of her class to the top of her year. She was quiet but precise, the kind of student who did not raise her hand often, but when she did, the answer was always exactly right. Her teachers called her focused. Her classmates called her serious. Mama Bizi called her her own personal pride. Tebena called her his daughter. The years passed the way good years do, not without difficulty, but with enough warmth to make the hard parts bearable. Nkechi finished secondary school with distinction. She studied business administration at the University of Abuja. In her final year, she wrote her thesis on sustainable charity funding in Nigeria. She dedicated it to her mother. The morning after her graduation, Nkechi came downstairs to find Tebena already at the kitchen table with 2 cups of tea. He had been doing that since her first week in the house, always making 2 cups, never just one. She sat down across from him. "I want to work with the foundation," she said. "Properly. Not as your daughter. As someone who earns it." Tebena looked at her over his cup. He saw the same steady eyes that had looked up at him in that cathedral 6 years ago, still brave, still honest, still certain. "Then earn it," he said simply. She did. Within 3 years, Nkechi was running the youth outreach program at the Open Hand Foundation, building shelters, creating school programs, and finding homeless children in Lagos, Kano, and Port Harcourt who were sleeping in places nobody else thought to look. She knew exactly where to look, because she had once been one of them. We've come to the end of today's story. I hope it touched your heart. Thanks for watching and staying with us till the end. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. See you in the next one. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from?